Perfect. Thank you, Nancy. All right, I'm gonna share, even though it's in presenter mode, it's still sharing the full thing. So we'll go with that. Okay. So for anybody that wasn't a part of part one, I'll just do like a quick reintroduction. I'm Keena Williams Finney, creative producer, AI strategist. I produce two podcasts currently, Meet Me at the Highland and How I Got Here with Drina Whitfield. I also work with podcasters and brands on consulting for new podcasts, existing podcasts, audience development, and most importantly, AI powered like workflow strategies. Because outside of podcast producing, I own Structure AI, which helps integrate AI into workflows in different industries. So today we are going to get into how to move your listeners from casual to loyal. And then the session is not about chasing downloads. It's really about creating shows that people consistently return to, because that's how you build the loyalty. And, it's mostly about building a community. And then I really just like blend my background of creative production and AI strategy for video first like growth framework. So hopefully you'll walk away from this. I generally don't do slide decks, but there's a lot of information. So I thought it'd be great to do a slide deck today. And then because I mostly work in AI, I wanted to utilize Gemini 3 in order to create this slide deck, and it did a really, really good job. So, all right. So, today, everything that we're covering today ties to one idea, moving your listeners from casual to active. You should be using AI as a tool to enhance your understanding of your audience. And I'm going to really like dive into that. Um, when it comes to podcasting, I think a lot of times people are using AI to like replace your voice, which great. You can use AI not to replace your voice, but also we'll go through like how I use it in the research phase. But AI makes everything very simple and can be done quickly, but it also can water things down if you're not using it correctly. So we'll go through all of that. So everything I'm sharing today comes directly from the work I do on the two shows, Meet Me at the Highland and How I Got Here, and just talking to different podcasters, video first podcasting. So, why growth has shifted from downloads, right? So a lot of creators are still like chasing downloads, unfortunately, because it does feel measurable. But the downloads don't guarantee engagement, right? And the last part of this is going to be monetization in December. And so in order to monetize, it can't just be downloads. It has to be that you're engaging, and that leads to revenue, right? So across the industry, it's a shift from like transaction to relationships now. uh Loyalists drive growth long term, and so algorithms are now like starting to reward engagement, not awareness alone. And that's happened because why? Because we have so many bots, right? So there are download like farms now. You can pay to have like your downloads go up. So that had to move away from that in order to make sure that the numbers aren't just numbers anymore. So, and it's not that it makes it harder, it makes it more authentic, to be honest. And we'll talk about, how that shift is happening when we get into like SEO versus AEO, which I don't know if anyone has heard of that, but that's answer engine optimization. So we'll talk a little bit about that and how that's shifting things. So let's talk about the listener journey, right? So creators give all of their energy mostly to like awareness and discovery. But the real like magic happens when someone listens for the first time. So one example I can share like for well, I'll actually share two examples, but as far as the listener journey goes, once someone listens to the podcast and they're interested, right? You want to keep them interested. And what starts to keep people interested is making them feel like they are a part of the experience. So, for Meet Me at the Highland, one of the things that we're introducing for the next season is these listening parties. And so we test them out, and they did really good. And so I'll say two things. These can work virtually. They don't always have to be in person because everyone doesn't have a budget to do bigger ones. Or if you have some local listeners, you can do it on Meetup and just host a listening party and talk about it. That is, you'll be surprised. We tested some out virtually and then we did a few in person at dinners, and now we're incorporating that for season two. So taking that just outside of the episode and bringing people into the experience is what you're going to start to, like build this community. And for the other podcast where we started for How I Got Here, we started doing like these How I Got Here dinner series, and it ties directly into the show because on that show, they're interviewing women on their journeys, on how they got to where they are. So now when we bring this experimental dinners into certain cities, we have like-minded women. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be anyone that was on the podcast. Now we just have women in the room that are talking about how they, got here and learning more about the show and more about the brand. So that's bringing them into the community. So getting a return listener is the hardest part. So once you get them, you just want to focus on nurturing them into loyalists and turning loyalists into activists. And it's kind of like a relationship cycle. So that's why that you want to start thinking of more things that you can do, more experiences they can have outside of just like listening to the podcast. And what's a loyalist, right? So a loyalist is like is more than a repeat listener. They actually like see themselves in your show. If you see like any popular podcasts, if you look maybe like in their comments, those are the loyalists. Those are the people that are there, they're showing up, they are engaging with each other, some of them, and this is like part of the research that I do, but some of them know each other in the comments. So that's the community that podcast has been able to build. They comment, they DM, they email, they vote on polls, they join your list. They really feel like they're a part of it. This is like who you want to build for. And honestly, you don't need to have like millions of them. That is gone. So it's not about quality, it's not about the quantity, it's more about the quality, right? And so once you get that group, you want to just make sure you're nurturing them, right? So any DM that they send, um you know any poll, any comment, you just want to make sure you acknowledge them and engage with them because they are investing more in it as they start to comment if they have. And even if it's like a negative comment, right? If it's a negative comment, obviously if it's spam, no. But if it's a negative comment, you want to kind of address it and understand like, oh, why that's your point of view, because a lot of times you just want to help understand their perspective and try to engage with them, and it's helpful. But why most shows plateau, right? So a lot of shows plateau not because the content is bad at all. Because to be honest with you, I have consulted with um some people that have done had ideas to do podcasts on something that I never would imagine that people want to listen to, but it works, right? So it's not the content. Um there's a few things. One is because the foundation isn't defined. So there's no clear discovery strategy. There's no like the metadata is weak. creators aren't repurposing their long form content. And we'll talk about like the waterfall strategy. And one of the biggest like hidden reasons shows like stall or just like don't grow is a brand guide, right? And so I'll talk to you just about um my experience with that, but without a brand guide there's really like no consistent identity across like episodes, clips, titles, show notes, social content. One of the podcasts that I worked on last year, they had some issues with, they did third party for their social, so they had like some issues with different third parties for the social. So they, in the course of that, they bought in. So the issue wasn't the podcast itself. The podcast was amazing, quality, content, everything. But once that happens, again, we'll talk about that during the waterfall strategy. But how you are getting that information out there is the biggest part of that. So because there was no like clear brand guide, and I come from um a marketing background. So in order to market a product, it has to have an identity. And so that is very important to me just on anything. It doesn't matter what the product is. And so what was happening is that you had three different social media teams that came in, and each time they came in, because there's no defined brand guide for this podcast, they had their own interpretation of what this should look like. So now you see it lacked consistency. What you want someone to be able to do is see something that comes out from your podcast, the branding, and they immediately know whether that is the design or just like the style, the quotes. You want to build that consistency so when they see it they're like, oh, that's Meet Me at the Highland, right? Like that's the tone of voice, that's the brand. But that podcast, because it went through so many hands, and each brand, each social media team had their own interpretation of what they thought the podcast should look like, it was a year of complete inconsistencies. So while this one might have been great, no one's saying that what they were doing was necessarily wrong, but there wasn't any consistency. So after 3 months, the branding completely changed again. So as someone's trying to lock into this podcast, they don't know, like they can't trust what they're locking into. Like they like this, but now it's changing again. So the brand guide is helpful for consistency and identity, but it's also helpful for, even if you don't have a social team or a third party and you're just like one person, even for you, it's helpful to be on track, to know like this is, makes one, it makes it much easier if there's like the same DNA that's happening over and over again, not the same content but the same DNA. You know what colors you're using, you know what fonts you're using, you know what you're staying away from, you know what you want it to look like. So once you define all of those, it makes it a lot easier. One, if you're a solo producer, that makes it a lot easier. Or if you're even just like have someone help you with social, it doesn't need to actually be an agency with a big budget. But if you actually have someone helping you with social, you can bring on an intern or an assistant. But just having them be able to see like this brand guide is like, okay, I get it. This explains it for me. This is the DNA. And then you can, create based off that. So that is very, very important. Um, okay. Let's talk about like what actually builds loyalty. So when you look at the shows that I produce, Meet Me at the Highland, How I Got Here, we do a mixed format. Some episodes are in person, some are virtual, some guests have big platforms, others are voices people are just discovering. And the reason I mention that is because the loyalty these shows have built and are building, it has nothing to do with like how polished one episode is versus the other, or how well known the guests are. Because again, on some of them, we do in person, which is a beautiful studio setups, and then other times we're doing it on Riverside. It's about the the content, right? It's also just about the consistency. What actually keeps people coming back is the experience you create, right? That consistency, the point of view, the way the show feels, the way the conversation flows. That's what your listeners attach themselves to. Once they recognize the rhythm, the identity, again, the identity goes back to, just like building that brand guide. These all fall into each other. They'll start to like stick with you because one, they know they can count on it, right? Like if they like the point of view of it, I have like some, like podcasts that I listen to that I'm looking forward to see what they think about something, right? So when it comes out, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to hear it because I know that they're going to cover this. Um, I'll tell you like a quick story. This is how much I know a particular podcast, right? So there's a podcast, and I have like a marketing PR kind of background. They were having a conversation about my hometown, in a restaurant that one of my best friends owns. She owns a restaurant in our hometown, pretty popular. They talked about it on the podcast. And I know the podcast so well. I do not know any of these people personally, but I called her, and because of the dialogue that they were having, they were kind of like making, one of the hosts was making a joke about he goes to all these restaurants and they have his picture up there. So I called her and I said, "Do you trust me?" She said, "Of course." Okay, go get this. I'm gonna send you a picture. Go get the picture printed out, frame it, and put it in the restaurant. I don't know them. She doesn't know them personally, but she can, like get in contact with a few people. And I said, I guarantee you, you have to do it today. They film on Tuesdays. When it airs on Wednesday, I can guarantee you that they're going to mention this if you can get the picture like to someone that can get it to them. She's like, "Oh, do you know someone there?" Nope, I don't. But that comes from me actually knowing the DNA of that show. And I probably was not 100% confident only because anything could happen and it could not air. That was probably the one reason why I didn't say I'm 100% confident. But exactly what I said would happen happened on Wednesday. That didn't happen because I knew anybody and I was able. It happened because I actually know the DNA of the show. I'm a loyalist. Like I'm a part of that community. So that is what you would hope to, want to build. And it happened. They actually mentioned her on the show, and then she had like food sent up there and catered it. So that was actually, like a great. I love giving that example because if it didn't happen, I was so confident that that would happen because I've been a listener of the show and I understand how the hosts like think and operate, and that's only because I'm a loyalist. So let's talk about podcast SEO. And I'm gonna move a little fast because I have a lot of slides, but I really want to get through all of them. Okay, so I don't know like how much when I talk about like the other things that I do is I help um brands or small mid-sized businesses just build solutions. Most of them are AI driven solutions. And we can do a lot of that more now. Help build out these solutions around like online presence and stuff with AI tools, right? One of the things that is happening that's shifting pretty drastically is SEO and just how search is shifting itself. And I don't know if anyone pays attention to that, like what's happening with Google and how people don't really click on anything anymore because of the AI overviews. But I'm doing a lot of research on that now, just for other parts of my business. And the search is like moving away from keyword SEO. And so, yes, you still should have keywords, but it's not the most impact now. It's more. AEO. And so AEO is answer engine optimization. So to put that simpler, is just search is leaning more on AI systems that pull like clear, and the keyword is trustworthy information, not just keywords. So we AI and this could really be because, as AI starts to dominate, they've gone through a lot of lawsuits from the AI hallucinates. We know all of that. So because of that, AI is lazy. So they want you to kind of do all the heavy lifting for them. So they are um very strategic about what information they say is the right information. And so that changes from keywords, right? Because for SEO is just pulling a keyword because you have it there. So they're not confirming anything. If the keyword is there and you've optimized correctly, your information is going to come up. AI is a little different. It's trying to be a little more intelligent about it. So you can't just have the keywords there. For podcaster though, this is actually makes things easier because if your titles, if your descriptions, if your chapters clearly explain what your episode is about, AI can surface your content in more places. So YouTube, Google, even like inside apps where listeners are searching by question and not by keyword. And so that's what you have to start thinking about. And this could be an entirely different um really to like chase trends is to be clear, to be direct, and to use the language that users that the audience is actually searching for. That's what's going to build like your authority, right? Because this is it, the LLMs now are really focused on brand authority across platforms. So let's talk about research, right? Because this also will tie into like your growth strategy. So I currently just produce internet based shows. I mean, interview based shows, right? So AI isn't helping to chase trends, and I'm not really like using AI for topics because these are interview, like based. So the core of my workflow is I'm using AI to help like understand the guests on like a much deeper level. So what I do in my workflow is I'll feed their LinkedIn, their past interviews, articles, panels, everything, past podcast episodes, and let AI help me map out like the themes and their pivots, their patterns, the parts of their stories that maybe, if they're someone that's done a lot of interviews, I want to try to explore something that they haven't already talked about. Um, and then that clarity helps me line up like the conversation with the emotional arc of the show, right? And so these podcasts are completely different. They have two completely different DNAs, two different formats, the way they're structured. So when I actually started building like a listening tool, because again, right, like that's part of what I do, like build technologies. So what I do with that is when I'm doing all of that, feeding in all of the LinkedIn past interviews and all that, I also am working like in beta testing on this listening tool that I'm developing that actually I'll just like put the guest name in and get more real time stuff too. To see like if anybody's like talking about them, if they're like a more well known, if they're not like as well known, then I can do the listening tool on their industry just to see like what questions, right? Like if there's anything that people are asking for something that might be happening in their industry that can inform, the way I start to structure like the questions for the interview. And I like to like build questions that tap directly into like the curiosity that's out there. So that can help with like engagement, like shareable clips and things like that. Um, Now for creators running like topic driven shows, same thing. AI plays like same kind of like parallel role. Instead of like mapping out the person, you can you're mapping out like the audience. Like, so you can analyze comments, like competitor episodes, whoever you consider your competitor. Reddit threads are very like helpful. If you're doing something on product, maybe check like Amazon reviews. Anything that shows like the question that people are asking, if that's the type of show that you're doing where you're like searching for topics, um, you don't have to build your own listening tool, but the listening tools and what people are asking, those different type of like AI tools are extremely helpful if you're looking for topics like even under a certain industry, if you just cover a certain industry. So whether the show is like guest driven or topic driven, the goal is really the same. AI can help you see like insights to like drive growth. So you just don't want to rely on just what you think, because you don't have to do that anymore. Like maybe 2 years ago, before these tools were available, this type of research was, we probably wouldn't be able to do it, especially for um podcasts where mostly people don't have like huge budgets to go doing like market research and see what people are saying. But now all these tools are readily available and we should be using them, just so we're sure that the things that we're talking about are timely, um, that are kind of fresh, but also that on the other side of that aren't oversaturated, right? Like you don't want to have a guest or talk about a topic that everyone is covering it. If you can give a different perspective on it, great. If not, and everybody's already covering it, then it might be time to move on to something else. That's just my opinion. So I talked about the waterfall strategy. So the waterfall strategy is very, very important. Um, this is also something that I saw happen. Again, I told you that all of the things that I talk about are just the experiences that I had over the years in developing like these podcasts. But the waterfall strategy is really just getting more out of the episode that you already created, right? Like, so the long form episode is your anchor, and you just don't want to throw it on YouTube or just put it on Spotify and just move on. This is like where you really can have like AI help. But here's what I do that's a little different. I know a lot of people that just take their episode, put it in one of the AI tools, and let the AI tool kind of chop it up and give you the clips. Great, right? Like it can do that. Um, for me, that's very generic. And because I work with AI and understand that AI gets better as you train it, right? So as you train it on how to be able to develop your style, your tone, as you customize it and personalize it, that's when you're going to get the most out of it. So what I do is I do allow AI to pull the clips, right? I allow AI to go through the full episode, pull the clips, but I also do the same thing. So I watched the full episode. I pulled the clips that, like I feel like would have like impact on social. And the reason why I do that is because in order for in the long term for AI to really help cut down on my workflow, because it doesn't help that I'm going to have it pull the clips, and then the clips that they pull, and I see it all the time, the clips that it pulls is just, they're just clips. So what I do is compare the clips that I pull to the clips that AI pulls, and then I'll go back and kind of tell them, here's the clips that I would have pulled, and here's why I would have pulled them. It's an extra step that you may not need to do it, but it's super helpful, because a couple of rounds of doing that will train the model to know what you're looking for, what style you're looking for. So I do that so that now when I go in and it pulls clips, it starts to get closer, much closer now. Almost with one of the podcasts, it could pull the clips and it's spot on. So that's like a helpful, like tip. And it does take a little bit more time in the beginning. But again, you want quality. You want quality. And then also, I don't recommend, I work with, AI. And I also do a lot of like compliance and governance in it. So you definitely will, it's okay for AI to pull the clips, and you want it to have the emotional arc, but you also want it to line up with the transcripts, have the names right. And a lot of times that just doesn't happen, and that could be because of an accent, the way AI interprets a word. So just having it pull the clips, it's not useful, and it's not helpful if you have to go back and redo it over. So that's my spiel. And then those clips, you once you get them all down, those become your shorts, your reels, TikToks. Your transcript becomes your blog, your newsletter, and that's the waterfall effect. So now you're going to take that one episode and break it down into all of this different content for every single episode that you have. And it moves on to all of these different platforms, whatever platforms that you're using. It moves on to all those different platforms. One thing I will say about the platforms, great if you can be on a lot of them because that'll build out growth. Not great if you can't manage them. Because if you go and you're on all of these platforms and you can't keep up, so then the consistency that you need is not going to be there if you're spreading yourself too thin. So you should pick the platforms that you want to be on that you can be consistent on, and then just drill down on those. Um, okay. Social context matters. So this is important because I do still see people saying like link in bio, episode out now. I will never click anyone's link in bio to see what your episode is about. Tell me. Right. And so when it comes to social context is everything, a lot of creators do the new episode out now with the link. Nothing happens. People scroll right past that. It doesn't really give you anything. So your job is really to put the value on the platform first. Like that's why the clips work. They meet people where they are already. And I know it works for me. Like I see a clip and that small part of context is probably like, oh, what are they talking about? Let me click on that. Um, so for how I got here, for example, this is exactly how I approach it. Whether I'm working with the social team or handling it myself, I always start with the theme of the episode. Like, what is this conversation really about? Um, Once I'm clear on that, the content we create supports that theme. So the clips, the captions, the quotes, the prompts, everything ties back to the core message. So the story stays consistent across platforms. And that's kind of what I was talking about when I said like the brand guide thing. Or just if you're, and this works if you're doing it with a team or you're doing it by yourself. You want to make sure that everything ties back to whatever that message was because it just stays on brand, right? If you said the episode, whatever the title of that episode is, and that's just like the premise, the theme of the conversation, you can just spearhead off of that. And you can use AI to help you identify um, that. I like to come up with different use cases. One of the things that I'm going to work on now is Gemini 3 can now watch videos. So I have like my full workflow in there. So now what I'll probably do is like go through with Gemini 3 and start to train them on what type of content I want them to be able to pull when I give them these videos. So I'll work on that for that to be able to help me. And this part is very important. Every platform, and this is why I said choose the platforms that work and then drill down on those because every platform has its own culture. How you show up on Instagram isn't how you should show up on TikTok or LinkedIn. So instead of like just like dumping the same posts everywhere, um, think about what each platform rewards. Like we know that Instagram is very polished and TikTok is very authentic, right? So, your behind the scenes may do better on TikTok unpolished versus something else on Instagram. So you want to figure out what it is and how you can consistently show up there. Because if I'm following you on, if I'm a big fan and I'm following you on three different platforms, and I just see that you're posting the same exact post on LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram, then I'm just gonna choose one, and I don't need to follow you on all three. So that kind of that's how you should be looking at that. Um, this is very important, like with your email. Social media platforms are rented. I think we all know that every time Instagram or the other day, Twitter was down because of the Cloudflare thing. So you want to make sure that you own your community outside of these platforms. It's great to get them there, but have an email list. Like you should have an email list in order for them to join your list so that if anything happens with one of these platforms, you can get them off of there and still have your community. For the people that just are on these social media platforms and they go down, like what happens then? You have to start all over again if you have no other form of reaching out to people. So maybe it's not email. I think email is like the best way. But if it's not email, maybe you're doing like a WhatsApp group, but just find out what it is. I say email because, again, WhatsApp could go down. You just want to take it off of these apps. We talk about this like engagement is two ways. So engagement is not just people leaving comments, it's you giving them something to respond to. For Meet Me at the Highland, these episodes come out once a month, and the episode comes out, and then the cadence is like once a week. There's these journal prompts that kind of dive into breaking down the episode and giving people like these um activities to do. And so what I started thinking was, we don't know that, people are leaving comments. I started to see people leaving comments saying like, oh, I did this and this. So we want to engage with them more. So now what we're incorporating is like these downloadable journals, right? Like so they can get the journal prompt, and now they can download the journal, and we can track that, right? Like we can track how many people are downloading it, and now we can drill down into that. So you want to engage with them on the things that they are showing that are important to them. If a listener, like I said this before, if they DM you, respond, right? Because that type of engagement, if they're DMing, they're invested, right? And so you want to make sure that there's some type of maybe call to action at the end of your episode, whatever that could be, like a poll or just asking them a question. And the same way I talked about like the content with the waterfall, there's more that you can even do like with the episode. Make this a part of your strategy afterwards, like especially if you have an episode come out, and maybe your next episode doesn't come out for 2 weeks. I don't have any podcasts that come out once a week or even twice a week. That's a lot. So and that's a lot just for the host that I work with. If it works for you, that's great. But in between that, you just want to make sure that each episode has a full framework. So you're doing the waterfall strategy, and then you're also doing like maybe like some Q&A, whatever it is that you're learning from your community. Watch it and see what are they replying to on YouTube. If they're saying anything, if they're not saying anything, listen, what I am going to tell you is not that this is going to happen. You're going to do this and then they're just going to immediately show up. The key word is consistency. If they see it multiple times, now they know that this is your thing. So one day it just takes one person to, and then get somebody to have your friends go up there and start the conversation off. But you want to continue to do it, because even though someone may not be responding, someone may actually be looking. So you just want to, whatever you decide that you can handle. I've consulted on people before that had these amazing ideas, but it's a lot of heavy lifting. So I'm like, that's great. Can you keep up with that though? Because if you can't keep up with it, I wouldn't recommend it. Like, don't start it if you can't be consistent with it. Um, and then just again, same thing, fostering like the super fans. I think it's cool to like name your community. I talk about the hosts with that, and I think we're gonna do like some little campaign for Meet Me at the Highland for what she wants to call the community, because again, it's all about acknowledgement. It's really about them. I think for this season coming up, we want to make sure that all of the experiences don't necessarily have to be in person, but we're trying to put in like new virtual experiences too, right? Like we're doing the listening parties, but also just like these playlists for walking. There's a bunch of like different ideas that we have on how to expand upon these episodes. And so that is what builds community. That's what turns people into super fans, because they're getting a lot more out of it than just the episode. It's kind of like the episode starts to come to life. So, for example, Meet Me at the Highland. This is Meet Me at the Highland. We film in bulk. We film in February, and then the episodes are, like released once a month, right? So right now we're planning for season 2. We're going to be filming in February. Episodes are going to release in June. Um the last episode for this season airs in December, and then after that we're having like this Meet Me at the Highland masterclass. Like legacy studio is what we're calling it. And so what we're doing is each guest that was on the podcast for the season, there were 7. They are going to kind of like teach a class on what the foundation was of their episode. And so it's a free master class, and we're actually structuring that now. But the point of that is that came from us paying attention to what people are talking about when these episodes come out, how they're helpful, how they wish there was more, how they wish that you can dive deeper into these things. So we're going to do that, and that's another step of moving your podcast from just like a podcast episode into more of like community building. um and listen, like you don't need a big team, you just need the right tools. Say it all the time. um I am a solo producer. I just happen to, sometimes it just depends. I work with um one of the podcasts I work with has a huge team for support. The other podcast, there's just me and the host, and we do kind of everything, but I run everything. Um, and so like I use Riverside. I talked to you about the clips. Opus Clip is great. Rely on Chat GPT, like a lot for just support, not like writing. Because here's the other thing too. The other day, Chat GPT was down with Cloudflare. So these tools, they go away. So you want to make sure that it's not a crutch. You want it to be a partner. um you have your own ideas, and for the most part it should just be like polishing them up for you. So if ChatGPT goes down, maybe it takes you longer, but you're not like stuck and say I can't do anything because I don't have ChatGPT to do everything kind of like for me. um and then to put it all together at this point, everything comes down to keeping your strategy clear and your connection real. um you got the tools, you got the structure, and you know what it's going to take for your show to stand out. And that's the reason why you're doing it, right? And so whatever that reason is on why you're doing it, and I say just be like flexible, pay attention to what people are saying, asking for, ask them like, is there any other questions? It just depends on what type of show you're building, and how much you want people to be involved. The more you can get your listeners involved, you're going to grow, because that's when they are going to start telling people, just like about your show, or you should listen to this, or, I got this from listening to this show. Um, that's why you want to just like build with intention. And so I talk a lot about using like AI, but I don't talk about it in the same way as other people talk about just like how quickly it could create content for you. Because while it can do all those things, I really do still believe that you should be the human in the loop, and we don't want to focus on the quantity and the speed. We still want to focus on the quality. And you can get like really good quality support, but just like Opus Clip, for example, using that. And again, these are all my experiences. I have like a social media team that uses AI for clip generation, but the clips that they are generating have no sentiment at all, right? And so I had to go back in and implement a hey, great, right? I work in an AI, I founded an AI first company, so get it, totally understand. But you want to watch the episode first too, like instead of just like giving it to AI and having it trying to pull out those like just emotional highs, like the empathy. It's still not there yet. It's not. It can pull them out based on timing, but it's not really pulling it out based on emotion. So you want to keep that in mind because it can be helpful. But again, it goes back to you training it for what it is that you're looking for, and then it really could be helpful. And then so the next one is part three, where we're talk about like monetization. And I think this really like sets you up for having something that's quality. Um, the podcast that I work with does not have millions of followers, but they've, been sponsored, and different things like that. So I look forward to getting into that. And then I will just open this up for any questions. Oh my God, I did a really good job. I wanted to get through all of these slides and I did. So, any questions? No? All right. Well, if there is no questions. Oh, um Tiana, you can come. I think if you're on mute, Nancy, she should just be able to come off of mute to ask her question, right?
Um, because we're in webinar format,
Oh, okay. So she has to type it.
yes, you would have to put it into the Q&A box or chat it. Yes, Tiana, you can ask through the chat. That's totally fine.
Yeah, the link dump is just saying like, hey, new episode out, check the link in my bio. Just like dumping your link instead of saying versus like the new episode out where we talk about blah 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 is out and then you can show it with a clip. Like the link dumping is it's kind of lazy. Like it's just a little like lazy and it's forcing people to kind of do the work. And listen, we don't look at anything. Just think how many times someone says check the link in my bio with nothing else. I'm not checking a link in your bio. So, you know, it's just better to give a clip, give the title, give a little bit about what you're talking about, and that's better than just dropping it. With very small audience, what do you recommend is the first step in engagement and community building? Oh, I mean, with a really small audience, honestly, I think it depends on what type of podcast you have, and I would just like throw a few things, at the wall. But if you get so let's say you have a really small audience, and this is when you kind of like force engagement. So if you have somebody, and I've done this, right? You just have someone go and like write a comment and then come back and answer it. Or you can also do I've had this question come in, even though you haven't had the question come in, but you're just kind of like forcing to get the engagement, like started. It's like the first person on the dance floor type of thing. Um, I have like 300. Well, that's a pretty good amount, Beth, and it's a very highly produced topical show. Yeah. So I would do that. Like I would you kind of go out there, like first. Like put in there at the end. I don't know how the show is set up, but if at the end you say like, "Oh, I've been getting these questions come in," and start like answering, some questions that you think, and that's where you can do a little bit of research to see what people are asking. Maybe not in, your community, but if you do some research to see what people are asking about your particular topic and answer them, I'm sure that can get like some engagement going. How do you go about getting sponsorships for your clients? So that's like the monetization that we'll talk about in part 3 in December. But again, these things are all different versus like how I first started out like with podcasting and using these different companies that say like they do sponsorships. Never done that like at all. All of the sponsorships and stuff that we've had has just solely just been on trying to pitching and then seeing what aligns and being very thoughtful. So, for example, the How I Got Here dinner series has been a sponsorship every single time. First, it was like smaller. The last one that we did was like a bigger, sponsorship. And again, my podcasts are not podcasts that have like millions of followers. It's just that it's quality content and it's the target audience. So you want to make sure that whatever sponsorships you're looking for, that it speaks to the target audience that you have. So whoever you're going after for a sponsor, if you have the target audience or the topics for the target audience that they're trying to get, you can make a case for that working. Um, what it was, okay, Tiana, you said, okay, so just for the captions. Oh, are you talking about the link dumping? Yeah. So the link dumping is just wherever I would just never just like dump a link without anyone knowing or having any idea what this episode is about. Like episode 4, check the link in my bio. I wouldn't ever do that. And you don't again, it's easy enough to just make a clip even before again use AI, great. But before you do, when I go through and watch these episodes, I watch it as like a viewer. And for me, whatever I start to react to, I'm like, oh, this is good. I'll just like save that because I'm watching it as a viewer. So I'm just like whatever I have like a emotional reaction to is what I'll say, oh, let me save that clip. And then when I go through and do it with AI, I try to see if they match up. Yeah, you can use AI to see, can I use AI to find what companies my audience like? I mean, you can use AI for that, but I think that just like comes out, right? So like if you're whatever your target audience is, um yeah, you if you're whatever your target audience is for the topic that you're talking about, whatever companies are in that industry, that's who you probably want to try to approach. And just depending on how big your community is. So you don't have to go to like a top company, but go to like one of the a smaller, organization and start there and kind of make the pitch for I have this community, it's growing and let's just say someone said they had 300, right? So you can go and say I have this community, it has 300. 300 doesn't sound like a lot, but if you tell them that it grew to 300 over the last like couple of months and you haven't done much yet, right? So you can pitch on the potential, right? And you just want to say like this is the target audience, these are the people that this is the demographic, they know who the target audience, so you want to understand, and all of those analytics are available. So you want to make sure that you understand your analytics and who's listening, like who's listening, who's watching the podcast, and then that's how you move into monetization because depending on what you're trying to get, you want to focus on that so you can try to increase it, and then that's what you can pitch on. Well, I think this is it, but this was great. Are there any more like questions before we drop off? Are you using AI for graphics? If so, how can you get more authenticity in the output? I see so much content that can tell is AI. I do not use AI for graphics. I don't. Yeah, I don't use AI for graphics. Again, this says a lot. I own an AI first company. I'm still about like quality. I like to use AI as a partner, not as a replacement. So no, I don't. I think that Kim, if you were to build out a brand guide, right, to say like what colors you're using, what fonts, just understanding the DNA of your show, creating content becomes way more easier than you'll have to because and I know we're going over, but AI is great, right? um but it still doesn't understand like the emotion, so it's never going to fully just be able to replace that as far as I can see yet, and I deal with it daily, so no, I don't use it for graphics. To be honest, so my LinkedIn is there and my email is that's my support, but it's Kina at structure.ai, and then my LinkedIn is Kina dash Williams. So screenshot that. Feel free to reach out and we can talk if you need additional help. But this was great. I thank you like so much for all the questions. Um I know Nancy gives us as a recording, and then the last one will be in December. So I look forward to seeing you all and thank you.
My computer seems to freeze really briefly. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I will go ahead and